never considered real estate as an option ever. It was something that I never saw myself doing, but now something I can't really imagine ever not doing in some fashion.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Biz Dad podcast. Today, I am excited to chat with Taylor, who, as we were discussing on the pre-call, we got to hang out for a little while in Tahoe, but never really got to know each other in Tahoe. So now we're going to force that on the podcast to know each other a little bit more. And of course, I've got Rorik here joining me on the call today as well. But Taylor, do me a favor, introduce yourself, your family, tell us a little bit about who you guys are, and then talk about your business a little bit as well.
Sweet. Well, I am Taylor Doolittle, originally from North Carolina, but for the past 12 years have made the Twin Cities of Minnesota my home, as this is where my wife is from. And
Nice.
Common known thing is Minnesotans will go out, grab a spouse, and bring them back to Minnesota. It's called the Minnesota Boomerang. It's how they convince people to come to the cold weather. I've been married for 10 years to my beautiful wife, Sarah. I met down in North Carolina at college, and we have two beautiful little daughters. I am a girl dad, and I'm absolutely loving it. I have almost 3-year-old Aurora, Rory, Grace, and then 4-month-old Olive, aka Liv, aka Livy. So Rory and Liv, and we're just absolutely having a blast. What else? We love to be outside. We love to adventure. We love to get our girls outside and just try to spend as much time together as we can, all together as a family. I run a residential real estate team out of a local RE/MAX franchise here in the Twin Cities. I started that in 2017 with my brother-in-law. And fast forward 6 years. Now we have 15 people on the team, and help people buy and sell and invest in residential real estate as well as some commercial stuff as well. Also have a small investment portfolio, as is pretty common for those that are fortunate enough to be in GoBundance. That's how I met Adam. What else? What am I missing, Adam?
Well, we got your wife, we got your kids, their age, and your business. I think you've covered all the steps on that one. So I'm sure we'll go into a little bit more depth on some of that stuff. But before we go into too much depth there, let me rewind your track a little bit. I've got here that you're 34 years old. Tell me what it was like growing up when you were 4 years old. Tell me about your dad. Tell me about your mom, your family. What kind of upbringing you had coming around.
Sure. Something that I think is so cool about becoming a parent is it just gives you so much perspective on your own childhood. And in my case, just have nothing but just absolute gratitude and thankfulness. Just had such a blessing of a family growing up. Not to say that we were perfect, but I'm one of 3 kids. We're each 2 years apart. Great planning by my parents. I'm 34, my brother's 36, and my sister's 32. And my dad's from Texas. My mom's from Pennsylvania originally. Both their families, or my mom's family made it to North Carolina. My dad got transferred there for work, and they dated for 8 months, and then they got married, and then had my brother. So my dad was a business guy. He was one of 4, and this is an example of one of the things that, like, me becoming an adult, becoming a parent, just understanding my dad and hearing his story has just made me so thankful. In that, one of 4 boys growing up in rural Texas, his mom and dad split at a really young age. My dad, I think, went to like 7 or 8 high schools because his dad was always traveling around, going to city for that next job. And my dad was just finally like, I can't do this anymore. So moved out on his own when he was like 15 into his older brother's house, but he had just gotten married and his wife was having none of that. So he was basically living in rented a room from a grandma when he was like 15 and just kind of made his way from there. And so my mom is one of 7. And when my dad met my mom's family and saw how her dad parented massive horde of kids in such a cool way, that's how my dad learned how to be a great dad. Nice. So I just have a lot of respect for people who come from a past not seeing something modeled really well in really any realm, but then turns around and as an adult learns how to become really good at that thing and kind of
Mhm.
defies the odds and becomes a great dad. So it's just super fortunate for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's got some parallels there to my story, especially with my dad growing up in a very rough manner, abusive stepfather, lots of issues going on. Where I was like, the more I learned about him, especially as I became a father myself, like you were saying, like the more I learned about him, the more respect I had for how he was able to, you know, even get out of that house and never go to jail, let alone become a father that now is enjoying retired life on a golf course. It is crazy the perspective that we get when we kind of sit back. And me too. Also, one of three kids, all 2 years apart. Great planning on my parents' part. I'm the youngest, though. You're the middle one, but. Me, I don't know why we chose to do every 4 years, which was a horrible idea. It's like, you get nice and comfortable and no longer in diapers, and then, hey, let's have another one. So that sounds, like a not so great plan, but I'm very thrilled about it nonetheless. Um, but all right. So, what kind of business was your dad in, and did you have any involvement in the business he did? What was kind of your perspective watching him do what he was doing?
So, well, when you're growing up, you just think like, oh, all parents do this, right? So I didn't have really great insight when I was in it, but my dad was in sales. So I feel like he was of one of the last generations that could really, in my mind, live the American dream. And what I mean by that is he didn't graduate from college. I think went to technical college for like a year, but left and started stocking vending machines, and then was the route manager, and then was the sales manager, and then was the region manager. And so he started off kind of stocking Dr. Pepper machines, and then years later worked himself up to be a local vice president of Coca-Cola in just the area that we were in. So just a awesome sales guy, where it was normal for me growing up for, oh, my dad needs to go entertain customers, so we get to go to the Charlotte Hornets game, or we get to go to the Panthers game, which was just so cool for me to bring in friends who didn't come from families where like, hey, that was the norm to go to an NBA game. It's like, hey, we were able to invite a friend sometimes and things like that. So my dad is just very charming. He's not charismatic in the way that I'd like. He doesn't need to be front and center of attention, but he can talk to anybody, makes everyone feel welcome, and is always just quick to joke, like quick to make people laugh, very witty, so many puns, just really good with people. My mom is as well. So them together, we were kind of the house that was the host house. So all the friends go over to the Doolittles, and my dad, his passion was cooking. So chef, right? So Chef Don. My dad's name's Don. So my dad would, cook a big meal. Everyone come over and hang out. So again, when you're in it, it just feels normal. But kind of getting further down the road and stepping into parenthood, you just realize how much effort that was, how much hustle that was. And, my dad was, what I hear is a common story of like, hey, didn't have the most favorable upbringing, so worked his tail off to provide for his family all of the things that he didn't have growing up.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's I'm wondering, did he talk to you at all? Like when you learned about his upbringing, was that more at an older age, or did you know about that when you were still going through, elementary, junior high, anything like that?
It's still tough. My dad's a hard shell to crack. He doesn't open up a ton about it, and I can respect that, because I think a lot of it comes from him. This is something that I've learned in the last year or two, is like he wanted to protect our image of our grandparents. He wanted to protect our image of his family, while at the same time not wanting to bring maybe some of that messy past into into us kids as like, hey, this is an option, or this is what the history of our family looks like. So I think some of it comes from probably wanting to protect us, but then also his personality. anytime we have a trip planned to go home to North Carolina to visit, my dad's so pumped, so excited, and quality time together is us just like sitting on the couch, have the Dallas Cowboys on. Don't need to say a word to each other, but like just because we're together and hanging, it like is great. So our relationship has never been like the deep philosophical conversations. He's one of four boys, and they were absolutely nuts. And he didn't have that kind of relationship with his dad. So
yeah. My dad's the second youngest of 9, and my mom is the youngest of 12. So it's like, yeah. So I still don't know why they chose to stop at 3. They probably were like, I have zero desire to make my house look like what it was growing up, right? So, but yeah, a couple of my dad's brothers, may have had some run-ins with the law and ended up on the wrong side of the bars and all that type of stuff. Where thankfully my dad never did. He had some run-ins with the law, but never ended up on the wrong side of the bars. So that's a plus. But but I've been trying to still get some of that out of my dad now. It's been almost 40 years of trying to pull that out of him, and it just doesn't. I don't know if it's just like an era thing. Like he's like, no, that's just not. Or if he's done such a good job suppressing it and dumping all of that history that he'd rather just not bring it up. Sometimes what I'm wondering, because I was curious on the same thing. What you were saying is like trying to save that image of grandparents for us. I lost that illusion pretty early on. It sounded like, I think that's what they were doing early on, but my dad's stepdad, Howard, he had threatened to break my arm once when I was like, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, maybe 10. So I used to always pat him on his head and say, all right, see you later, Grandpa. And, I feel like we were still holding on to that illusion at that point. And then he said, if you ever touch me again, I'm going to break your arm. And that was the end of that, right? That illusion was off into the dust. And oh, so this is what it was like for my dad growing up. Got it, and it still did. It barely clicked at that age, but yet I could not imagine like the stuff that would have brought up for my dad, from his past, to dealing with that as his quote unquote father figure. But man, oh man, what a mess.
I think it's generational to an extent. Where I think that generation was more just like, suck it up and just deal with it. Whereas now it seems like in the last 10 years, 15 years, where it's like, share your feelings, be vulnerable, which, I mean, you love, I know, because you're in abundance, and that's the big thing, is like, let's get real as quickly as possible and talk about stuff that like actually matters. But I think that's hard for a lot of people. Yeah. Just full stop. But also, I think that generation too.
Yeah, I think it is also. I mean, nobody wants to open up that baggage after a while. If you've packed that baggage and it's stuck in that closet nice and firmly, nobody really wants to open that nonsense up. That smelly baggage that everybody like. No, I'll just leave that in the back of the closet. Thank you very much. But all right. So your dad obviously turned around pretty well. Did well for himself going through all of that. So is that kind of where you got maybe your entrepreneurial type of bug, was from him, or were you on a different path before and then came into the real estate side? I mean, obviously you were on some sort of a different path. It was 2017 when you started the real estate. But.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for me personally, I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship.
Okay.
I always loved the idea of it. But my background before real estate was tech support. I worked at Apple for 5 years, helping grandmas learn how to create photo albums on their computer. No, this is how you turn it on, ma'am. So in my mind, I didn't really have a profitable skill to become an entrepreneur. Now, my mom is incredible, and her dad started and ran a really successful ad agency for years and years and years. So he was artist, creative, art director, ad directors in photography and paint, and like just all sorts of mediums. And so my mom grew up working for her dad, the family business. And so I think that probably was instilled in me from a very young age, of just family business, and this is cool and creative. and things like that. So was always encouraged in creativity and working hard. But I'd say what was instilled to me from my dad was just the work hard and strive.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to, I mean, it just feels like a million years ago growing up, but I feel like up until maybe through high school and up until college, my dad was of the mindset of like, you work hard, you get the corporate gig, you work at the company for 30, 40 years and you retire with a
Mm-hmm.
gold watch. But right around when I was right in college, so let me rewind. With that mindset, I feel like that was more like directed. This is what you need to do. Like, this is the way you do it. There is a game plan, because that was his history.
Yeah.
And then when I was in college, where he worked went through an acquisition and he was the top dog. And then all of a sudden, him being the guy that everyone loved in the office, he went to another office and now he's just a number. Now his head's on the chopping block every time they
Mm-hmm.
are doing layoffs and things like that. So I think his experience of like, oh, wait a second, the world's changed because he
Yeah.
experienced it. That was a big drastic change of, maybe there's other ways, other directions.
Mm-hmm.
So not to say that he wasn't proud of things that I was doing previously, but it was less of like a directed, like, you need to do this, you need to go get that internship, you need to work for that company.
Mm-hmm.
And more of like, oh, I realize now that the world's changing and it's not like the old corporate structure that he grew up with. So yeah, I'd say I definitely learned just absolute motivation and sticking to your word. And I grew up playing competitive soccer, playing in school and playing in club. And
Mm-hmm.
again, getting older, just seeing how much my parents hustled to get me to practices and traveling and going to that tournament and things like that.
Yeah.
And so pushing me and encouraging me in sports as well was definitely a way to kind of push me and instill that hard work attitude.
Awesome. I would imagine some of the sales side of the house too, just seeing how your parents both interacted with people and having that, that type of personality. Was that something that you were able to pick up from them as well? Or is that something like, because some people they're natural at doing that type of stuff. And, it's funny because I've seen some parents that are just unbelievably natural at it and their kids like hide behind them all the time. And it's like, okay, well, like some of that's obviously nature, some of it's nurture. Just kind of curious on you, because obviously you decided to go into sales and working on, selling real estate and stuff. Do you have that same, ability to keep people interested in chatting with you and having that sales background?
Yeah, I feel like that's my superpower. Just like the biggest gift that God's given me is stick me in a room with anyone and I'm going to have a pretty good chance that I can make them smile and just help them feel comfortable and just us have a good conversation. For sure got that from my parents, where always welcoming people in, always being the hosts, always making people feel comfortable. So I feel like I got a really cool mix of my mom and my dad, where from my dad, just easygoing, kind of jokey personality, being able to connect with people, make people feel seen. My mom has a lot of those qualities too, but my mom is like the organizer, the event planner, the spreadsheet lady, the operations mindset. So being able to get both of those from my parents has equipped me with a skill that like really was a great crossover for real estate, as well as my experience working at Apple for 5 years. I mean, Apple's training is insanely good. I mean, their training is just great for the retail employees. And then just having practice for 5 years of talking to people that came in and hey, I thought that I lost all of my family photos. Like just people devastation because their computer crashed, right? And being able to talk with people, make them feel comfortable, address their concerns. So 3 of my years at Apple were in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota, and then 2 of my years at Apple was actually in Sydney, Australia. And so, crossing borders too, and being able to have conversations with people from different cultures and different backgrounds and things like that. I feel like I just earned a master's level degree in just connecting with people, which is really, really fun.
So how did you get into Australia? That's really interesting. Is that just something you applied for, or how'd that pop up?
Yeah. So let's see. Sarah and I got married in 2013, so 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2015, we had the opportunity to go abroad because my little sister was married to a British guy named Sam, who we love. And they were living over in right outside of Oxford, England. So they said, hey, come over here. We have an extra bedroom and like do the European backpacking thing for a couple months. So the initial thought was, because we had both taken our jobs. Sarah and I had taken our jobs as far as we thought we wanted to. So my next steps at Apple were management, and I just didn't really feel like I strongly about retail management as a long-term path. And so we put our stuff in storage and moved to England with our backpacks, thinking we'll be gone for 2 or 3 months. And so my sister hosted us where we would go and do a 2-week trip in Ireland and then come back for a week and plan what do we do next. And then a 2-week trip in Germany, Austria, Italy in a car. And then, so did that for a couple months, had Christmas with her family in Wales. And then we were running out of money. So the thought was, okay, we either need to figure out a way to make money abroad or go home. The original plan was just to go home at that point. Because in my mind, I was like, I'm going to have a mountaintop experience. I'm going to have this epiphany. The Lord's going to tell me, like, Taylor, go back and do this thing. That's not how it works, come to find out. But I had some friends that I had worked with in the Twin Cities moved down to Sydney, Australia, and they're like, hey, we have an extra bedroom here. You guys should come down here, get working holiday visas, and we'll get you a job at Apple. So instead of coming home, we got one-way tickets to Sydney. So we went the other direction to go further away from home, and I got rehired at Apple, thinking I'd be there for 2 or 3 months, and we could go home just with a little bit of a cushion. But then the Lord just put me in some really cool interactions there with customers, like stuff that just doesn't happen, happen in a really cool way. And so management at the store was just like, hey, who are you? Like, what are you doing here? Like, we want you to stay. So I interviewed for a promotion. They gave me the promotion and they sponsored us for a visa, which that visa would have put us on track to become Australian citizens if we wanted to. So our 2-month trip abroad turned into almost 2 years abroad, with most of that being in Sydney.
So that's awesome. Yeah. So, you've mentioned it a few different times with like, the Lord putting you in different situations and hoping to hear something, but I'm interested to hear what kind of situations and how were you able to decipher there were situations that were odds you like that meant something when you were meeting some of these customers, and how all that kind of path worked out.
Yeah, so just a very easy example. So I'd come from 3 years at Apple, and very seldom. Oh, do you see fireworks behind me?
Yeah,
sweet. I don't know.
I don't know what you did, but well done. I mean, I saw both of your hands. I don't know what you touched, but impressive. Boy,
maybe it's
I can do that. I don't know what that was.
So I'd come from 2 or 3 years of experience at Apple in the Twin Cities, and very seldom do you have a customer interaction where the customer is like, oh my gosh, who's your manager? I want to give you kudos. And that, in like the first week I was there, I think that happened 2 or 3 times where they're like, where's your manager? I'm like, right over there. And they go up and they're like, oh my gosh, we love Taylor. And so I know that didn't happen because my 3 years at Apple previously, like that just hardly ever happens, right?
It was the accent.
It's one of those things.
It was.
Probably was the accent. It's like you don't need to give that an experience for everyone to tell everyone, but you have to give a pretty exceptional experience for people to like want to stick their neck out for you. So I just had a couple of those experiences in like the first week or two, enough to where the managers were like, what is going on? Who is this person?
We need to keep this guy. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's. I would imagine that would have been a really exciting experience. I've lived overseas multiple times, but it's always been the military or the government sending me somewhere to say, "Hey, this is where you're going to go now," and it's it's a different experience to just kind of pack up your bags and go and figure it all out. So I think that had to have been a lot of fun. And obviously it was pre-kids.
It was really fun in a lot of ways, but also really tough in a lot of ways because traveling full time is way different than just working in a different city abroad. So I felt like one thing that I was really quick to correct people on was when they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you're in Sydney, you're so lucky," and I'm like, well, yes, but I'm working here, and so I'm just working, living normal life. I just happen to be as far away from family and friends as possible, and it's not like I have the ability to go to the beach every day. Now, on the weekends, you could go to world-class beaches, which was great. But I had a really great experience. Sarah, my wife, had a really tough experience. So we had some really, really good, but really tough growing pains in our marriage. Just because being that far away is really hard.
What walk me through some of those growing pains and what that looked like and how you guys kind of worked through that. Because here you are, obviously, that was 2015 was when you moved over there. So here you are, 7 years later, 8 years later. Obviously, things worked through and worked out a little. But talk me through some of those pains and how you guys were able to work through some of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it stemmed from we were in our late 20s. I'm 34 now, so we were like 37, 38, 27, 28. And a lot of it stemmed from Sarah just being like, what the heck are we doing here? Like, this has been great. Well, we say we want to have a family. We have no foundation. We're living out of our backpacks. What the heck are we doing? And then my response being, I'm an international business major. I never thought I'd use my major, and kind of technically I am now. So I'm building my resume. So I'm going to go back with, I'm doing a lot of cool gestures on Riverside.
Yeah, I didn't know. I've never seen these gestures pop up. For those of you who are just listening on the podcast, you're missing a show, because on the YouTube side of the house, we're able to see these fireworks, these weird thumbs up popping up. I don't know how you're doing that, but that's impressive. Now I'm going to have to research this because tech is not my thing, but clearly it's yours because you're doing it without even knowing it. So
yeah, we're just the idea of like, hey, we don't have a foundation. We need a foundation in order to move our life forward. So Sarah had a very clear feeling of like, we're just spinning our tires, wasting time. And for me, I was working in the flagship Apple store, 3 stories high, full glass front, leading a massive Genius Bar team, and skateboarding to work every day and rock climbing in the Blue Mountains on the weekend. So I was having the time of my life, and Sarah was having a really tough time. So it was a lot of growing on my side of, I need to support my wife better. It doesn't matter. I need to stop being selfish, and I need to do what's right for our family, and not just selfishly what I think is right. So it was like every 3 or 4 months, there would just be a tough conversation of like, what are we doing here? And I'd be like, well, this is what we're doing here. And then finally we had one of those conversations, and I was like, you know what? That's right. Let's just go home. And I think when I said it out loud, when I verbalized it, was when in my brain it clicked. I'm like, you're right. What are we doing? Let's just go home. In retrospect, I think the experience we had as a married couple was just absolutely transformational for us. And just going through challenge and being on the same page and being able to kind of get some of that wanderlust out of our systems, not feeling like, well, what if we would have done this? Like, we were able to do some really cool stuff. But then I also think one of the main reasons we were there is we got super involved in a small little local church there, and just absolutely had just a life-changing experience in that it was the first time we, as adults, had chosen to get involved with a church community with people who were like actually doing it, like actually doing the Christian thing, like not just a church on Sunday thing. Like, hey, we hang out a lot during the week, and this is what we do during the week. And so it was a really cool growing experience for me in my faith walk, which was really fun.
Yeah, that's always a huge thing to be able to look back on and feel that support of the church and knowing that you're doing the right thing in that front. But I want to stay on the marriage thing for a minute, and then I'll get back to the faith side of the house. But so for 2 years, was it the whole 2 years that you were there that she was kind of saying, hey, like, what are we doing every 3 to 4 months? Or was the beginning not so bad and it kind of turned into that? Or, because I mean, that's a long time. And I'm just trying to piece together like your mindset through those 2 years and how, like, what was it that finally got you over the hump?
No, I would say it was probably the last 6 to 12 months that we were there, because we traveled. So we left the U.S. It was like September 2015, and then did UK and Europe until January 2016, and then got one-way flights to Sydney January 2016, and then we got sponsored for visas. I think that April, May, June, somewhere in that summer. So the traveling part was really, really fun. Then we went down to Australia, and that was a new experience. But when we were on our working holiday visas, it was kind of like a 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So I don't know if you've been deployed abroad, they're like, oh, I don't want to get the nice blender because I'm just leaving in 3 months, or like, I don't want to invest in this relationship because why would I? Because I'm probably going to leave in a month. So why would I put all the effort in to try to get to know this person when it doesn't matter? Is a very bad perspective, and that's the one we had. And then we got sponsored we found out that our time was going to be longer. And once we got sponsored for the visas, we were like, we'll commit to a year. We'll do a year here. And so once we got into that more long-term mindset of us being there for a year, sometime in there was when Sarah was just ready to come home, and I wasn't.
Yeah, I could totally relate to the experience of just kind of like, well, why do this? Because we're going to be leaving soon. So one benefit about the military side of the house is that all of us are in the same boat. So it made life a little easier. You built those relationships in a very different way, especially when you're like actually deployed, like, Iraq, Afghanistan type of deployed versus just assigned somewhere for 3 years. It's such an odd feeling. I'm watching, military folks who, in North Carolina, I was stationed in North Carolina, and you see that a lot because there's a lot of military in North Carolina that get married to somebody and leave. And then all of a sudden the spouse is like, I don't know why we're doing this. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And the military member's like, well, this is what I've been doing. You married me knowing this. And then you see all these divorces from people just wanting to jump ship and leave. Yeah. The wives just are like, the spouses, I should say, are just kind of like, I don't know if I want to, I don't know if I know what I signed up for on this, and I guess it would be similar in your sense. Like, I don't know if I know what I signed up for with this 2 to 3 month trip that's now 2 years long, But so for me and my wife, it's always been communication. It's been one of the biggest things, and it sounds like your wife was big on pushing that communication side of the house for you. Do you feel like you were hiding from the communication, or you just weren't necessarily hearing it? Like you were listening to it, but not really hearing it, type of thing. Do you think you were clouded by the excitement that you were having? Where do you think that the disconnect was for that last year?
I think probably clouded by the excitement that I was having. But also thinking that, well, clearly I'm correct here.
Yeah.
Thinking that just because in my mind I could justify the reasons for us being there, it meant that it was okay for us to push through it. Yeah, I think it was just selfishness, honestly.
So I think that, seeing. And I ask and I'll put it in a different context for anybody who might be listening, is we can do that a lot, especially entrepreneurs, business type of folks, business minded folks. I could justify why I have this extra meeting, why I'm doing these extra things, why we're pushing these things here or there, without actually taking the time to think about what that's doing to our family, or in your case, future family. Like, okay, we're not even able to have our family yet because we're doing all of this travel. We're in a different country. We don't really know when we're leaving, what we're doing. So I'm wondering, like, as now where you're sitting, have you caught yourself getting into that pattern at all again in business life, or do you feel like that was kind of a good altering point for you, a good pivot point for you in that thought process to make sure you were thinking about, how Sarah has been working through all this stuff as, through your choices as well? Because I mean, that's been really hard for me on the business side. My wife knew what was going on when I was in the military, right? And when I was going back in the military, right? So we were both on the same page there. But I don't know if she quite understood what it meant when I started buying real estate, when I started getting into, business owning and operating and like that type of stuff. That now it's a different level of communication and conversations that we have to have that I'm not sure she's totally bought in on still to this point. And that's, been years. But.
Yeah. So two things come to mind. First, let me just rewind to that whole idea of well, I'm only here for a month. Why would I do this? One of my mentors that I was able to meet in Australia told me, he said, don't put a limit on the amount of time that God needs to make an impact on your life.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's a month or a year, like you're really limiting what God can do. Like you're putting God in a box of like, oh, he needs all this time. So I just do an encouragement for anybody out there. It's like, even if it's a short amount of time, don't discount the fact that a lot can happen during that time. So yes, I have found myself, to get back to what you were saying, is have I found myself getting into that mindset of maybe justifying actions? And that's something that I think is really easy to do as a motivated person, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. Getting into that mindset of I'm doing this so that one day, or I'm doing this so that one day. So I probably fell into that a lot more when I was starting my business, just that 3 years, 2, 3, 4 years of grind mode of like just getting traction, getting the snowball rolling. Probably had easier times justifying it then compared to now. I feel like I have some good systems and really good operations and good people to delegate to help prevent this mindset. But it's really easy to get into, well, I'm putting in the extra time now so that later I have the time to spend time with my kids, or I'm taking this call because I need to make this sale so that I make the extra commission so that I'll have the money one day to give really big. Or I'm doing, and then realizing with that mindset, I mean, you're just moving the goalposts. You're never going to achieve that final goal. And if you keep using that as a way to justify, well, you're not guaranteed that the money's going to be there. You're not going to guarantee that you're going to have the time. And even if you have the money and the time, well, all the relationships that you neglected on your way there are no longer part of your life. So great, you have time to spend with kids that don't like you because you've been absent, right? So really try to check myself on that mindset.
Yeah, that's. I think it's super valuable to at least keep that in mind, and I hope that anybody listening is doing the same thing, because it's. How many times have we heard, as you were, as your wife was pregnant, or when your kids, you're probably hearing a bunch right now too. Oh man, they grow up so fast. It's crazy how fast they grow up. But yet here in our businesses, we'll be like, okay, well, I just need to do this for this period of time, forgetting that period of time is also the same period of time that our kids are growing up so fast, we're missing it. And I think that's that's one of the reasons I wanted to run this podcast, is so that I could constantly be thinking about that. If for no other reason, then it's a reminder for me every time I talk to somebody that, like, this little guy that's sleeping on my lap right here is, before I know it, I'm going to pivot a second. I was saying it this weekend. We were walking around, and my 8-year-old, who is like a little ball of muscle now. Like, the kid he's not light. He's, for 8 years old, he's just this little, he's thin, but man, he's just a brick. He's like 70 pounds at 8 years old. It's ridiculous. I don't know how heavy he is, something like that. But it's like just a ball of muscle. And he was like, Daddy, let me, can I ride on your shoulders? And I was like, dude, like, no, you're too, like, I can't keep tossing you up on my shoulders anymore. Like, I've had neck surgery, shoulder surgery. My back's not in the greatest of shape. Let's tone down the shoulder rides. Right. And then I was telling my wife, I was like, it's funny, because I was listening to somebody, and he was saying, you don't know when it's going to be, but you're going to have a last time where your kid sits on your lap. You're going to have a last time where your kid asks you to ride on your shoulders. You're going to have a last time where they're comfortable holding your hand walking through the mall. Like, you're going to have a lot. You don't know when that last time is going to be, but there's going to be a last time. And you're only going to know that it was the last time when you look back at it and go, boy, that was the last time that's ever going to happen again. And it might be a year after that last time. And it was like, dude, toss your kid on your shoulder. Like, I don't care. So I put Adam up on my shoulders, and, like, I was telling it to my wife, I was, man, I need to remind myself of this. So, I'm it's one of the reasons that I, even before we started recording, like I know I'm going to get something out of this podcast, if for no other reason than this portion of the conversation, you and I talking, reminding me that this right here, having my youngest boy sitting here on my lap sleeping while I'm recording, like I'm not going to have this forever, and I need to remember that. So these constant reminders, I think, are extremely necessary, and that's one of the reasons I love GoBundance as well. Is we talk about all of those things. It's not just about business and how much money did you make last year? How much is your net worth increased? Blah blah blah. It's a lot about hey, how's your health? How's your longevity for your family? How is your family actually doing? How's your marriage? And I think that having that constant reminder is phenomenal. And I applaud you for realizing it, and semi early in your relationship, and trying to push through that even now. But I'm jealous that you've got some of that automation a little bit more than I do in my businesses. That's for sure. So, I gotta work on that and chat with you about that. But
well, I totally can resonate with what you're just saying, and I try to remind myself of that in the moments where Rory's having a meltdown, or is feeling really needy and wants to hold my hand, but it's inconvenient because I'm trying to cook breakfast and I need both hands. I listened to a podcast a couple weeks ago. Alex Hormozy was being interviewed, and he said a practice that he does sometimes is he imagines himself as his 85-year-old self looking back at his life in the now present moment and just thinking, I would give nothing. I mean, I would give everything to have Rory be upset. I'm like, going to cry just thinking about it. I'm like, I'm giving all away right now just to have Rory just want to hold my hand right now.
Yeah.
Or to like wake me up in the middle of the night. She needs to cuddle at 3 a.m. and now sleep sucks that night, but I get to cuddle. Like, I try to remember that we're going to look back at today and say, wow, those were the glory days. Like, those were the good old days. And so try to live with the mindset of like, we're in the good old days right now. There's going to be some frustrating times. There's going to be a lot of patience that's tested, but we're in the good old days. Like, you only get such a limited amount of time with your kids, and just, man, live it up every day.
So I'm hoping that conversations like this, when somebody's listening to it, and that, after you and I have this, is that we remember that tomorrow, that we're living the good old days. So we remember that in 5 years, that we're living in the good old days. Because I want us to always look back with a delight that we've been doing the right things and enjoying that time with the kids, no matter where they were at, no matter what they were doing. Because when they're, 20 years old and we're, cross country skiing with them, or downhill skiing out in Tahoe, or doing whatever, like those are now the new good old days, because we don't have to lose any of that, right? And we can always look back on these moments and enjoy the fact that they were there. Like, I mean, the breakdowns, the meltdowns. You and I started this recording late because this one right here was having a hard time, going to sleep, right? Like that's tough, right? But at the same point, man, now I get to enjoy him hanging out here on my lap, sweating his butt off and making my shirt all wet from all of his sweat. But, it's enjoyable nonetheless. I'm going to remember it, and it's going to be a good time, right? But no, there's not much better in life to me than being a dad, and I've said it on the podcast many times, and I'll continue to say it. I've got God number one, my marriage number two, and my kids number three. Like, putting them in that order, making sure that they know that they're very wanted, they're needed. I love them forever and ever, and always will. But man, oh man. But anyways, so tell me a little bit about your faith, because you've mentioned it a few times. I'd love to go down that path a little bit. And like, did you grow up in the church? And what does Christianity look like to you in your life?
Yeah, so I fortunate to grow up in church. Went to private Christian school my entire life, baby. Never in public school, which was a lot of sacrifice and hustle on my parents' side, because it ain't cheap, and I realized that. But yeah, I feel like I had a very common story for those that grew up in church, where it starts out as like, well, I do this because this is what everyone does, and I'm doing this because I'm told I'm doing it. And then you go through kind of a exploration of, okay, why do we believe this? Okay, what do I believe? And so very fortunate that I never went off the deep end and did anything crazy exploring like the other side of things. I'd say in college went through a phase of taking my faith seriously, but also just having really messy theology. And then I'd say kind of post-college, again, like going to church on Sundays, but it was really only a Sunday thing. Didn't super take it seriously. And then I'd say it was when we were in Australia. Again, like making some of the friends that we made there was something that was super impactful to me in my faith. I'd say probably one of the biggest impacts was me finding a group of young guys at church that every Thursday we got together for coffee at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. before everyone went to work. And we just, how was your week? What's going on?
Nice.
How cool we pray for you. So like being in community with Christian dudes, like game changer.
Yeah.
Absolute game changer. So then moved back to the Twin Cities in 2017. That's when I started a real estate business, but then I got super involved with the church, a local church here. And I think that was the first time in my adult life where I'm like, I'm going to really actually try to do this thing, like try to live like Jesus says, like you're supposed to live, and try to love people the way that the Bible says, and not feel like I'm doing all of these like church things because they're tasks I need to check off, but actually like having a deep desire to know Jesus and want to be more like him. So Sarah and I are in an incredible community here in the Twin Cities. Go to an awesome church that preaches the Bible. Just, we're going through Revelation right now, which is absolutely hardcore bonkers. Revelation is nuts. But it's like, hey, we're going to go through these 6 verses today. Right, so just teach us straight from the Bible. And yeah, I'd say faith is of utmost importance to me. If you look at the core values of our real estate team on our website, it's all values straight from the Bible with verses to back them up. And you know, as a team, we're always getting together, praying for each other, sharing stuff in faith, and just encouraging each other. It's because I just know that if your identity is wrapped up as a business owner, if your identity is based on being a husband, if your identity is based on being a dad, if it's based on any of that, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And then when you fail, you're absolutely destroyed because, well, your foundation was built on something that was unstable. So me being a Christian business owner, I feel like I'm just absolutely unstoppable because it doesn't matter what happens in my business. Yeah. Because no matter what, I'm already saved, I'm already redeemed, my identity is found as a son of God. So I feel like God plus one is the majority, and the victory's already been won, right? So I just said a whole lot of like kitschy Christianese words, so I apologize to your listeners, but it's just something that I'm just super pumped on and super excited about, and I just don't see how you make it through life without having a foundation in faith. It's really hard even with that, and without that, I would want that for everybody.
Yeah. You know, it's hard because I think everybody has faith in something, right? It's where they're putting their faith, right? And you know, even somebody who's an atheist, like they have faith that they're correct in that, right? Like their faith is in the fact that there is no such thing as God, and that's what they're holding on to, right? And that's still faith. It's still, you know, a belief in something. You know, if you look at creationism from that perspective and say, okay, well, you know, the Big Bang. Well, you still have faith that the Big Bang is accurate. Like there's still faith there, right? Because you still have this one. I think Joe Rogan recently on one of his podcasts talked about it. He's like, there's still, you know, no matter where you look at it, there's still it comes down to one thing. Like one thing had to have happened, but none of us know what that one thing was, right? So the Christians say it was God, and the scientists who are non-Christian say that it's this Big Bang. Well, you still have to have faith in something. That something had to have happened, and where are we putting our faith? Are we putting our faith in something that crumbles and can't stand the test of time, or are we putting our faith in something that doesn't crumble at all? And to me, it was one of the going through a lot of the same stages you did, and trying to establish my faith as a Christian as an adult. I've probably done it, rebuilt it twice as an adult. And the second time I rebuilt it is now the strongest that it's been, in really digging into, okay, what do atheists actually say? What does, the world actually say about X, Y, or Z happening? And and looking at, other religions and saying, okay, well, if you look at Muhammad, if you look at, Joseph Smith, if you look at all these various different things, those two people in particular, right? God gave them this revelation themselves that nobody else could ever see, that nobody else ever saw. And then it tends to crumble when you go past that person. Where I looked at Christianity and went, okay, well, it doesn't crumble past Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Paul. It doesn't crumble past this. It stays firm in where it's at, and that's where it's been my turn to go on and on for a little bit, and I'm not even sure where the point of that was all going, but it took a lot of work to kind of rebuild that and understand what it was that I wanted to do and how I wanted to raise my kids, and because I did the same thing. I grew up with my mom went to church every week. My dad still doesn't. We're still holding on hope, still trying, but I grew up in the church, just knowing that this is okay. Well, this is what everybody does, and it took some work to get through all of that. So I'm going to pause there for a minute to see if you have anything you wanted to add to what I just said, and then I've got a question for you after that.
Well, I think something that's a really cool opportunity that we have as dads, if you call yourself a Christian. So there's a crazy stat. I'm going to butcher the numbers, but I'll give you the idea. If the kid is the one that is trying to lead the family in faith, there's a 4% chance that the family follows. If the mom is the one that tries to lead the family in faith, there's a 17% chance. But if the dad is the one that's leading the charge in faith in the family, it's upwards of 80 or 90% chance that the family follows. Which I just think is such a cool responsibility and opportunity that we have as men to it's not do as I say, it's more do as I do, right? Being able to model that and being able to show man, I can't wait for my girls to walk downstairs and then catch me doing devotions at the table. Because I just want that seared in their memory of oh, this is normal.
It's, and I think what you mentioned, do as I do, right? And making sure that we're actually representing that properly, right? If we want to, it's not a game to be played; it's a life to be lived. We have to make sure that we're actually living that life and not just playing that game and hitting those check boxes, and playing that Christian game. And that all too often, it still happens to me now. I'm not nobody's perfect. That's one of the benefits about church is we're all hypocrites. So everybody's welcome because every one of us still sin and still do the things that are wrong. So please come on in, come and join. The water is hopefully warm and not lukewarm, and we're not sitting on both sides of the fence. But there's work to be done in all of us, and I want to make sure that we're walking that walk the way we're supposed to, and representing Christian men the way that we should, and and that goes into my question is you and I both had a similar thing as far as this is just what people do, but yet when we got a little older, may have not necessarily stepped away from the church or stepped away from our faith, but had to play some tug of war with that. What, if anything, are you doing to think about how you want to make it so that your kids maybe have that tug of war while they're still in the house with you? Maybe challenge their faith a little bit while they're still there to help them kind of work through it while they still have a support system that's guaranteed to be there as opposed to when they're out of the house and the support system is wherever they choose for that support system to be. I don't know if that question is making sense, but I can reword it if needed.
No, I think I know what you're saying. It's how do you equip them to be able to defend what they believe and actually be thoughtful about what they believe.
Yeah, instead of just like, because I feel like I went through the motions as a child. This is just what people do, so I'm just going to go through these same motions, and then it took a while for me to kind of build that up myself, and I don't want that to be the same case for my kids. I'd like there to be a little bit more defense early,
Yeah. Well, I think going through the motions is important. If I only read the Bible on the days where I was like really pumped to do it, then there's probably a lot of days that I wouldn't, but that doesn't mean that there's not value in me doing it, right? So I know you know that. But I think it's, for me, and what we've planned to do is, it's like already all of the books that we read are like very theologically sound, like really great Christian kid books that are diving into, like, we have a children's adapted Pilgrim's Progress, which is super, super cool. It's like a picture chapter book. And that's Rory's favorite book to read. And it talks about, these kids going on a journey and going through struggles and asking for help and just putting the story of Jesus into a journey, a story of a journey. So I think that, and then also just being thoughtful about conversations at home. Right now, that's what I'm trying to prepare myself for, is when my kids get old enough to where I feel like I can have really good, deep conversations like that. So right now, everything in my head is like, in theory, if I do this, or I would like to do this. So a lot of it is what I plan, like I want to do. I'm holding up a book for those that are listening called Habits of the Household by Justin Earley. I don't know. Have you read this, Adam? Have you seen this?
I have
not. It's just doing things like this. I'm trying to prepare myself on, like, how do I bring God into the normal everyday habits of our household, instead of just like, before we eat dinner, we thank God for the food and we say a prayer before we go to bed, and on Sundays we go to church. This is a book that I'd recommend you read, and anybody read. It's the subtitle is Practicing the Story of God in Everyday Family Rhythms. What I like about this is that it's not written by some pastor that went to seminary. It's written by a lawyer. A dude with 3 boys that's just in the thick of parenting, and he wrote himself a manual for himself of, okay, here's every part of the day. Waking up, meal times, discipline, screen time, family devotions, marriage, work, play, conversation, and bedtimes.
Nice.
And this is why those things are important as a family, why it's important to insert God into it. And here's some tactical ideas on how you can do that. So I really love this book. I'm almost done, and really, really suggest it. Because it's motivating, like, hey, this is why this is important, but also here's some ideas to do these things.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I have wrote it down. I will have to get it for sure. I'm also interested in the books you talked about as well, the kids' books that you talked about. So I've been trying to get my kids. So I started homeschooling this year. So various different reading, for my 4th grader, like a bunch of different types of reading material that I bought for him. And what you're talking about sounds like it would be right up my alley to get him.
So just so the listeners, if anyone's listening to this, the website for those books, lithoskids.com, LITHOS kids.com. And it's awesome. Little Pilgrim's Big Journey. And it's just awesome.
Yeah.
It's just so good.
All right, so building habits for sure, and showing, so that going through the motions, I think is necessary for sure. Like for me, I'm a huge why kind of guy, and I've trained my kids to ask why a billion times. So that's also challenged me to try to figure out why it is I'm doing certain things. Okay, well, why is it that I'm going through these motions? Like, why are these motions important? And I think that I need to build a good reference point for my kids, for my family, to be able to say, okay, this is actually why, and be able to verbalize it better than I think I can right now. So, but I think that's a constant work in progress to make sure that I'm building the family relationship as it, as it's supposed to be, as God would want it to be. So, all right. So let me.
That's gonna be a really hard stage of parenting for me, is when you get to a stage where your kids start making their own decisions, and you kind of allow them to make decisions.
Yeah.
So you hope up until the point that you've just planted some really great seeds in their hearts and in their souls, so they know if they go off the track, they just know where their value is.
Yeah, they feel that conviction. Yeah, where it's helped. I mean, because I've I know the track that I went on. I mean, I wasn't a terrible kid by any means, but I certainly was not an angel either, right? So I'm trying to figure out, what my kids are going to be doing and how that's going to work and how I want to react to it. And I already do a poor enough job reacting sometimes with what they do now. What the heck am I going to do when they're 14 and 17 instead? Like what a pain this is going to be. But a wonderful pain, but it's going to be on my shoulders to make sure that I'm representing again what a godly man that's running a household is supposed to be doing, not necessarily just what the world wants to see or anything like that. But man, it's not easy, especially when you're looking at how we're running businesses and how all that's going at the same time. And man, oh man, there's a book that I read called Dad, Tired and Loving It, and that was a great one for me to kind of look through as well, and reminding myself that no matter what it is that we're doing as a dad, like it's a needed thing. Like be exhausted, be a dad that's very tired because you've been doing all the stuff that you need to be doing for your family, and you're not just kind of coasting along. So,
that's awesome.
All right, I want to chat a little bit about your business side of the house. So you got into real estate 2017. What led you down the path to go become a real estate agent and open up your own branch of Remax?
So it was an accident on my end. So we moved back to the States summer of 2017. I thought I was just going to jump into corporate tech because that's where my background was. And in my mind, I had a pretty strong resume. But we came back into town right at the point where my brother-in-law had been on a real estate team for about a year and was doing really, really well. And he wanted to start his own team. So that was right when we were coming back, and my brother-in-law, Sam, this is not British Sam, this is American Sam. I have two brother-in-laws named Sam. So this is when American Sam talked to his sister, my wife, Sarah, said, "Hey, Sarah, you should talk to Tay about real estate. I think you'd be good at it."
So hold on. You've got two brothers-in-law named Sam. Your sister's name is Sarah, and your wife's name is Sarah.
Nope. I probably said that really confusing. Sam, my brother-in-law, his sister is Sarah, who is my wife.
Okay. Gotcha. You're okay. For some reason, I thought it was your sister, Sarah. I was like, golly.
Things are about to get weird. No, my wife, Sarah. So Sam talked to Sarah and said, "Hey, you should talk to Tay about real estate." So I never considered real estate as an option ever. So when Sam brought that as an idea, made sure to just pray about it a ton and talk to everybody and just say, "What do you think? This is an option. What do you think?" Looking for someone to say, like, "This is a bad idea." Yeah. And everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, you should totally do it." So
especially 2017.
Yeah. So July 2017, I took my real estate classes. In August 2017, got licensed. And that was when my brother-in-law, Sam, and I started Team Steady Real Estate. And so the team was just Sam and his idiot older brother-in-law, Taylor, trying to hustle around and sell any and every house possible.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was something that I never saw myself doing, but now something I can't really imagine ever not doing in some fashion.
Awesome. So you got into it 2017, started doing the agent stuff, selling houses. Yep. When did you start to actually grow this thing? Because there's so many agents out there that are just they just buy or they sell a house, and that's it. They sell a house, they help somebody buy a house, that's it. And then you decided you were going to build a team instead and run it that way. How did that conversation go? What was that path?
So yeah, I mean, selfishly, we wanted to start a team because Real estate is an individual sport that we wanted to try to make a team sport in a sense. And just, I know the value of having a great team culture and being surrounded by like-minded individuals that are going to push you. So we started the team end of summer 2017. 2018, we brought on our first full-time agent. His name's Lars Anderson, who's also in GoBundance, who is now our third team leader. So me, Sam, and Lars. And Sam got up and running. He taught me. I kind of wrote it down and systematized it. Then we passed it on. I got up and running really quick. We brought in Lars, said, okay, well, can we do this a third time? And Lars got up and running even quicker than we did. And then every year after that, we picked up maybe one to three agents. So now it's Sam, Lars, and I, and then 12 agents on the team. So 15 agents,
nice,
including us. So we've never grown for the sake of growth. Everybody that's come onto the team, for the most part, has been someone that went to college with all of those guys. Most of the guys on the team all went to a local Christian university here in the Twin Cities called Bethel. And so it's like, hey, my buddy Lars is on the team. Like, oh, hey, my buddy Brett's on the team. Oh, and so just sitting down with people and just saying, like, hey, do your values align? Are you going to add to the culture? Well, this is about the effort. This is kind of hard to do. As long as we set good expectations, like, come on board and let's try it. And so now I've gotten to a point where we just have such an awesome guy. It's like, I almost feel bad talking about my job because I really actually genuinely enjoy my job, but then work with the best people on the face of the planet. And we're all entrepreneurs, self-employed. So we don't have to play by any of the rules that you might need to when you're in like the corporate structure, where you have to be careful about talking about your faith, or like you can't you can't pray as a team, or you can't have this spot, so it's just really, really fun. It's really, really great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I recently was listening to I don't know if I mentioned it on one of the podcasts before or not, but I was recently listening to now I'm forgetting his name. He's another Christian real estate guy, podcaster, changes his hair multiple different colors.
Ryan Pineda,
thank you. And he was talking about being unequally yoked in more than just your marriage, right? And it's like, no, it's like this can go for your business relationships as well, and making sure, and then like having that relationship to be able to talk about those things that openly and be able to, pray with your team and be able to work through that stuff. I mean, that's really exciting to kind of just hear you say, I've got a buddy of mine that we've been really wanting to do some business together. And that was one of the same reasons, like we're both, strong in our faith, want to be, the best dads we can, and make sure that our investments and our business is going down that same path and looking properly. So it's, I love that thought process, that idea, that, that feeling that you have that makes me excited to hear. So again, good on you building a team that of like-minded type of dudes that are like-minded type of people, not just dudes, that are growing together. I love it. But
it is actually all dudes.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Like-minded dudes. Yes. So, so how are you planning to? I mean, your kids are still a little young at the moment, but with Rory and Liv, like, what are your ideas and thoughts of like exposing them to the business side of the house and showing them, what that looks like later on? I mean, I've talked to a lot of different people that I mean, I'm still working on it. I told my sons that I need to do this still, but employing my kids in the business so that I could pay them, $12,500 a year, get them to be able to go and invest in an IRA and that type of stuff. But I want to learn as many ways as I can to expose my kids to business in a way that meets them at where they're at that time. But I'd love to hear if you've had any thoughts that route, or even if you haven't, no big deal. But what you're thinking as far as that goes when the kids start growing up a little bit more.
Well, just clarification: if I have any good ideas on this podcast, they're not mine. I stole them from somebody else.
Exactly. So that's the whole point of this podcast. So I can steal everybody else's good ideas. Yeah. Too easy.
We have some friends that live out in California. They've got, I think, 7 kids, a lot of kids.
Nice.
And one of the rules in the household is like, you have to start your own business by the time you're 11. And so they have chickens, and one of the kids is like sells the eggs. Two of the girls teamed up and they make pies and sell the pies.
Nice.
It's kind of like a lemonade stand thing in a day where no one's doing lemonade stands anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. In my ideal world, it's setting up a way where they can do something that they're excited about and see some sort of fruit from their labors. It's always my goal. I don't want to get caught the into the bad habit of like, you're going to do these things because this is what I like to do, or you're going to do these things because this is what I wish I could have done when I was young. What has been our goal up to this point, and I hope to stay accountable to this, is I just want to expose my kids to, I want to provide them the opportunity to experience all of these things so that they know that that's an option, and then they can choose whatever option that brings them most joy. So like with entrepreneur stuff, it's like, man, I'd love to set up a way for them to easily make something and sell it. Or with real estate, what's really nice is I can actually just bring Rory in with me to the office or on showings or on things like that. For providing some sort of way for them to be able to create something and then sell it and then see that they're reaping some sort of benefit from the work that they did. Rather than like, oh yeah, I went to Dad on showings and he's just hanging out in houses with people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know quite what that looks like, but I love that idea of like making it a family, like this is a rite of passage. By the time you're 11 or by the time you're 13, like, show me your business plan.
Yeah.
It might be selling cookies.
Yeah. Yeah, as you were saying that, I was like, man, we live in a very small neighborhood. It's like a little 3/4 mile loop, and that's it. And it's just a handful of houses that are in here, and that's it. It would not work so well to put a lemonade stand outside. They would be kind of bored and get really sunburnt by the time the day's over without selling any lemonade. But I could just picture them on the road outside of the neighborhood, like with little signs and doing all the stuff. And we're working on building. Hopefully, by the time this comes out, it's already built and we have them in place. But our business plan for what are they called? Vending machines. So I want a little vending machine route for the kids to be able to put together, and hey, have this little guy in there, stocking Doritos and M&Ms and Monster drinks. So I think it'll be a lot of fun to kind of watch them build that out. And well, hello there. Good morning. Yeah, is that about it? You going back to sleep now? Ugh. I tell you what, this is wonderful being able to record with him hanging out here in my lap. I should do this every time I record. Besides the fact that, like I said, I was getting extra warm. But now I want to your point, I want to expose them to as much as I can so that they can kind of see what that looks like. But I don't want to necessarily force their hand one way or another. And that's it's a difficult balance, and I haven't quite figured that out. I also want to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I'm not making it look like to them, boy, there's no way I ever want to do that, because I don't know. I'm hoping that moments like this, where again he's able to just kind of hang out on my lap, and he realizes that, oh well, Daddy works from home and he's able to do this and hang out with me. That's a good sign for him. What's up, buddy? All right, just get comfortable, bud. No big deal. Just get comfortable. For those of you listening,
I'm curious how I will react or how I would react if you're, because anyone that's parents have been through the experience of like, you're so pumped to give your kid this experience and like, they're going to be so pumped, and then you do it and they're like, the kid just like could care less or immediately wants to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So setting up this like, I'm going to have them be an entrepreneur, and then they just aren't motivated that way, or they're not excited about it, or they don't seem to have that kick of motivation. I'm curious if that is more nature or nurture, and if it is nature, the appropriate way to react to that when your kid's just like not pumped to do that.
Yeah. So I think that So initially, what I was planning to do is buy a house for each kid and have them kind of help manage it and do all the stuff. And that way, I have good assets and they get to learn the differences between assets and liabilities and understand what it's like having a renter and dealing with all of that. But the more I talk to the kids, the more, especially the older one, he seemed almost detached from the idea. Like, it was just kind of like, okay, sure, like he was ready to invest $100 in it, but it's like, what does that mean to me? I don't really know what it means to own a house, So the more we talked, that's when I started going down the route of the vending machines. It got them on board with like, okay, we get to go buy a bunch of snacks. That sounds awesome, right? So kind of luring them in with the enjoyment of eating a bag of Doritos on the way to stock the shelves, right? But yeah, I don't really know what it's actually going to look like when they're doing it, right? Because I'm making it kind of a school project this year for my oldest. He's going to be helping out with it, of course, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to approach it necessarily. Because again, I want it to be something that they want to do. If they start doing the vending machines, they're like, well, this is terrible. I mean, obviously, it's going to have to be something that I'm going to want to. I'm going to have to continue doing if they don't want to do it at all. So I don't really know, but we'll see what kind of bug they get attracted to. But I think that that's the beauty about entrepreneurship is you can go down whatever route makes you happy, right? If you like digging dirt, you can make a business out of that, right? I mean, they have plenty of businesses about digging dirt, right? Just depends on how deep you want to go and how wide you want to go. So, it's just find their interest and try to build it out from there. But I don't really know what that's going to look like because I'm still at the beginning stages of this too. So we'll see.
I'm not sure if you've deep dove into this subject on any of the episodes, so feel free to skip. But I'm curious about your decision to homeschool and how the transition has gone and what that looks like for you guys.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a process. So it's funny because like when my wife and I first got married, my wife grew up in a doing the same thing you did, going to a private Christian school her entire upbringing, and then went into the military. And for me, I was in public school the entire time, and then went in the military. I felt so prepared for real life, quote unquote, going through public school. I mean, I'd already been to all the parties with the drugs. I'd already seen a bunch of people act stupid. I'd already been exposed to pretty much anything you could do. I've had friends that got arrested. The world, I understood, quote unquote, the world. So when I went in the military, it was normal for me. Where my wife didn't quite have that experience, right? She was not exposed to nearly as much as I was. She didn't get to see nearly as much as I did, which I think, looking back on it now, especially as a dad, is an unbelievable blessing to have not. I wish that I wasn't as exposed as I was into some of the various things that I was. So then, I was saying that I wanted our kids to go into private or public school because of those reasons. And then once we had kids, I was like, nope, not a chance. Especially as I started looking at what was going on in public school and all the stuff. I was like, there's no way that is going to happen. My kids are going into private school. So we started off in private school. And there were multiple times. So we moved here to Florida from Northern Virginia. So put them in one school, and then I wasn't fully thrilled with that school. We moved them to another school. A quarter of the way through the school year, which was a very difficult transition. And then I had a couple trips I was doing, and I left without them. And then I brought the kids on one trip, and the amount of extra work it was to bring them on a trip was exhausting. Like they were, my oldest was already trying to catch up from switching schools where they were already a little farther along in their education than the first school, which is exactly why I wanted to switch schools, by the way. So the second school was like already he was trying to catch up and behind the eight ball. And then I took them on a trip, one of the many that I wanted to take them on, but I couldn't take them on any of the other ones, especially after this one. It was like, man, there's so much extra work I got to do, all this paperwork that I've got, all this stuff that I'm doing. So it was like, how can I want to be able to travel a lot. At least once a quarter, I want to go somewhere, but preferably, about once a month, I want to travel somewhere. Sometimes it's for a GoBundance thing. Sometimes it's for, we're getting ready to, at the time of this recording, in 2 weeks, we're going to San Antonio to put on our our second annual conference for ADPI, the education company I help run. So I'm bringing them to me with there for that. I mean, we're going to be going for a whole week in San Antonio, hanging out, and I get to teach them, history and do all this stuff. So homeschool was part of that conversation of, okay, well, what does this look like if we decided to homeschool? The more I listened to people who did homeschool and brought their kids on trips and all this stuff, I was like, this sounds awesome. There's a bunch of people in GoBundance that do, there's quite a few homeschool families, and this is almost one of the other catalysts to it is I started asking other GoBundance guys about the homeschooling. Then we started a homeschool chat, and we're all chatting about, okay, for those of you who do homeschool, what do you do? For those of us who are interested, what can we do? So I just started deep diving into what it would look like, how I could work this. And one of the other things is I was looking at 45 hours a week my son is putting into school for a third grader at that time. I was like, how is a third grader doing just as long of a work week, quote unquote, as a full-time, 30-year-old going to work every week? Like, this is just ridiculous. Yeah. So I'm saying all that to say there was a lot that was going into what I was looking for my kids, and I wanted to be the one who was impacting my kids more than anybody else. I wanted to be the one that was choosing who their 5 closest friends are that are influencing them. Eventually they're going to choose it themselves, but if I can expose them now to as many of the right kind of people, quote unquote, as I can, then hopefully they'll be ready to choose those same kinds of people later on in life as well themselves. So, did that answer your first question as far as why I was doing it? And did that bring any other questions?
Is it who's running lead on the homeschooling education? Is it you and your wife together, or your wife or you, or?
Just me. So my wife is still Air Force, so she goes to work every morning. So it's all me. Lucky kids. Wow. Not so much. It sucks to be them, honestly. So, but no, yeah, it's all me. I set up the time in the morning to be able to knock it all out. It's been going pretty well, honestly, because you really only need, especially for a fourth grader and a kindergartner, basically. I mean, we really only need 3 hours a day for the most part. And really, my involvement is really only about 2 hours a day. And then the rest of the time is Adam doing his own thing, whether it's reading his books or doing some of the math problems or building a science project or whatever it is. He kind of goes off and does it on his own while I'm in here working. That's what he's doing right now. Is I don't know what piece of homework or what piece of schoolwork he's doing, but it's all me. I'm trying to structure it well. I mean, it's still fresh. We've only been doing it for a couple months, so we're learning here and there on what are good takeaways and what are not. And the hardest part thus far has been unschooling the boys. Like this is not. We're not sitting down in a classroom. I don't care if you go read your book laying upside down on a chair outside on the porch. I don't care. Like, just let's enjoy learning. Let's just have fun learning. Like, I don't. It's all going to be learning. It's just how we do it is very different now. So.
I don't know if you've listened to any Vodi Bakum. Does that name ring a bell?
Very much so.
Yeah, he's got a good quote about homeschooling. He's like, "Don't send your kids to Caesar and expect them to not come home Romans."
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that idea of the flexibility, and then just also like who's the number one voice speaking into your kid's life. And I mean, sending a 5-year-old off for 7 hours a day, like that just it seems kind of nuts. So we're gonna try homeschooling and see how it goes.
Yeah, I'd say that one thing to do for sure is to look at. So for me, honestly, I would not do it if I did not have an au pair. The au pair is a game changer because I mean, with my wife working, there's no way I can manage to do homeschooling and run a business from home while I have 3 kids, right? So that just wouldn't be possible. But so the au pair makes a massive difference. So I don't know, what does your wife do?
She's stay at home full time.
Okay, awesome. Well, then if she's up for it, then that would be something I would definitely say is I think that she's probably going to be, and I'm saying this in a completely blanket statement way, not knowing your wife at all, but most women being on the women's side, being a little bit more nurturing, a little bit more patient on the child side of the house, probably going to be a little better than me because I'm not so nurturing and patient. It is work for me to work through that, especially when I know I've got some business things that are creeping in the back of my brain on what I need to get done that day. But I mean, I still wouldn't trade it for the world because again, I get to spend more time with them. I brought them up to Philly and New Jersey with me on a trip recently, and I'm again taking them to San Antonio. We're going up to Vermont for the GoBundance winter events. I'm sure I'm going to take another trip to, like Islands of Adventure and that type of stuff in the middle of the week, because why not? I can. So it's been thus far, it's been wonderful. And the flexibility that you have is great. We have an amazing group here in the Tampa area that is a homeschool group. I would imagine somewhere in the Twin Cities they have a similar thing, where now your kids get to be exposed to all sorts of different things. I mean, they run different classes. I mean, they've got culinary classes, they've got entrepreneur classes, they've got different events that they're doing. They've got like, hey, let's bring the kids on a field trip to the zoo type of thing, where now they get exposed to multiple different age levels and grade levels, and you get to see different things and be around like-minded people. And to me, that's again, I'm curating the environment that I want them to be around, as opposed to the school just doing it. So, yeah, I enjoy it though. It's exhausting, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, I love the idea. In theory, I love all of it. I think Sarah would always wonder, what if we didn't try it? So she's going to try it. And they'll lead on it and just see if you can mentally handle it.
Do you know Aaron Amuchastegui?
Yeah.
So he and his wife wrote a book called The 5-Hour School Week. And they've been homeschooling for a long time. Daniel Del Real they were homeschooling for a long time. I think they just sent their kids back to a private school this year. But those are two other guys I would definitely chat with about the homeschooling. I'd be happy to chat with you and your wife if you'd like at any point, just to give you my take on things and how it all went. But all the different programs and everything. And that's another good thing about, being a Christian, is there's a lot of Christian homeschool programs. And I can walk down some of those paths and choose why I chose what I chose and that type of thing. But now my oldest is at the door, of course, because when I'm on a podcast, how can he not show up? Right, buddy? Oh, look at that big old goofy smile. Come on over and say hi to Mr. Taylor.
The golfer. The pro golfer.
There's the golfer. The pro golfer, he said. You going to steal an earbud so you can say hi? Go ahead. Whichever one you need. There we go. All right, so we were just talking about homeschool. You want to tell them what you think thus far?
I like it.
You sure?
Yeah.
Your teacher.
What's the funnest part about it?
He said, "What's the funnest part about it?"
Getting to be the Sufi.
Oh, that's fun.
I think he's sucking up. I think is all that is. Are you sucking up to me? How about going on trips? Are you looking forward to the next trip?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have fun up in Philly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you learn about American history? Not that you remember. All right. So apparently your teacher needs to be a little bit better, more diligent.
Oh, that's.
So he's got Mr. Taylor's got a couple kids that he's looking at. Mm-hmm. You get to hang out with your brother. Do you like doing that? Yeah. And your sister.
And
you get to see
you
your
can
sister.
Go practice putting. Go practice putting whenever you want.
Yeah. How about you tell him to do that some more? Oh, buddy. Go out there and practice swinging that golf club some more. I'm going to have to make that mandatory PE in the backyard, making sure that you get that in. Yeah, awesome. We do. You got a putting thing right there in the back. Get to work, kid. All right, give me my headphone back. Are you going to be sticking around in here or what? No. You can't leave with it, because then I lose my headphones. Bring it here. Come here. Yeah, little rascal. All right, go have fun. Get back to work. Get back to work. Man, oh man.
That's really fun, man. You just, I'm sure there's a lot of opportunity for creeping thoughts of like, I should be doing this work thing, or I shouldn't be doing this work thing, or, but man, it's hard for me to think that you're ever going to regret it this time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, when I was talking to Daniel about it as well, that's kind of what he said. He's like, there's never been a moment where I said, boy, I wish that I didn't have as much time with my kids.
Yeah.
Like it's just not a thing that comes across your mouth. And that's been a good reminder for me. And it's, am I sacrificing building more because of it? Yes, I am. I know I could build more if I was putting more effort into the business and less effort into the kids. But in the grand scheme of things, what I'm building is very different than a bank account. What I'm building is very different than my net worth. I'm building, hopefully, future men and a woman that are unbelievably strong in their faith, that are very intelligent and enjoy thinking outside of the box, that are ready to face anything that comes in front of them. And to me, that's a much larger and stronger build. It goes back to even like where your identity is, right? If my identity is in whatever the world says my identity is, then that's a problem. So if I am choosing to build what the world says that I should choose to build, I think that's a problem. I need to be choosing what God says I should be building, and that's a strong, faithful family. So, I again, saying that out loud is a good reminder for me that I'm doing the right things, and so even in those moments where I'm struggling, it's a good reminder. So. All right. So what's on the agenda, Taylor, for you next in the business? What are you looking to grow more on the business side? And then I'm going to ask the same thing about your family after that.
I'd say on the business side, the real estate world is in flux right now. Just with the market, I'm sure anyone listening has heard the articles. Interest rates are higher than they've been in 20 years. Mortgage applications are as low as they've been in 20 years. So the market's not moving as much as it has been in the past 7 years. But that's okay, because it's still moving and there's still business, and that's something too. It's like just the ability to keep a business moving even during uncertain times. It's just so much to be thankful for. I feel so blessed. So I'd say probably less goals around the actual real estate sales type realm, but more on the real estate investment side of things. And it's just kind of growing that passive income through real estate, owning rentals, long-term rentals. In a time where it's just no banks are giving up money, it's really hard to get loans and it's hard to find deals at work. But not letting that be an excuse to not keep searching, and then just kind of preparing myself for what's to come in the next year to 2 years. With likely in the commercial real estate side of things. If we see a correction there, just being able to be in a position where you notice opportunity and have the ability to take action on opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's going to be critical right now. I mean, I think commercial real estate as a whole is going to be taking a bit of a hit, and already has been, whether it's office space, whether it's even multifamily. I mean, I've been buying multifamily for a while, and it's been extremely difficult now the last year and a half trying to find deals that actually the numbers worked out, and that sellers aren't living in the clouds and haven't quite made it back down to earth yet. It's like, do you not see where things are? Do you not understand? Because I'm not willing to overpay for things, which has been very difficult to buy anything this year because it's just been rough. But I think that you're on the right track to at least prepare yourself to be in those buying modes. And I think everybody should be in that, going back to the be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. I think we're going to be at a very fearful time here in the near future. I don't think people have really caught up to what's on the horizon. My crystal ball broke last week, so I don't really know what is on the horizon, but I can have some ideas based off of past. Welcome back, buddy.
I'd say another thing would be just providing what I can to agents on our team to help them through what's probably going to be another year or two of less sales going on.
Yep.
Can't sell houses for them, but I can at least be supportive and encourage them and push them and provide resources within reason to help equip them. So,
what does that look like on your team? How are you kind of equipping them? What are you doing to kind of grow them and keep them on the... Because I know there's tons of agents that just ran away from real estate. They're no longer doing it. They went and found a W-2. They went and found whatever. They're not, they jumped ship completely. What are you doing to kind of keep your team motivated and focused on the business as a whole for them?
I'd say the main thing is kind of there's the three guys that lead the team, and then we have
Yep.
like second level leaders, like the guys that have been in it for 3, 4, 5 years and who are doing well. Those are kind of the leaders on the team. Really just pouring into them and giving them ownership of the direction of the team. Like, hey, what do you guys see? What do we need? How can we support the guys? Like they're a little bit closer to the guys that are more on the beginning part of their career. So really pouring into those guys, giving them ownership over what's the direction that we're going and what we're doing as a team. So my big thing is pouring into, to put it into military terms, it's like if we're the generals, it's like our lieutenants. Like, how do we just take care of our lieutenants and make sure that they feel supported and like they know what's going on and they feel like they have some ownership over the direction of what's going on.
For sure. Yeah. And that makes a huge difference in knowing that and having that feeling. So I like that for sure. So I want to ask about the family side as well. You were one of three. I think you said was it your wife that's one of seven, or no, your dad?
No, my mom
married into your mom was one of seven. Yeah. So are you guys stopping at 2? Or are you planning to have more?
Sarah, my wife, is one of 3 as well. So
okay,
for both of us, family of 3 feels normal. So I mean, ideally, we would love to have 3 kids and game time decision for 4.
Nice.
Just we wish that people would have focused on all of the awesome things about parenthood. I mean, when you're not a parent, then people like to say like, "Oh, well, say goodbye to this," or "Say goodbye to freedom," or "Say goodbye." It's just, I mean, there are sacrifices you make, but the pros so far outweigh the cons that
for sure.
It's just not even.
Yeah, I completely agree. I told my wife I'd have 7 if she would let me have 7, but she controls the factory, and let me know when the factory should. Oh wow, now we have notes getting delivered under the door. Yes, Adam needs help with something for homework. Fantastic. He better find a better teacher.
I'm the same as you. I told Sarah I'll take as many as you'll give me.
Yes. Yep. I mean, I think it's being a dad is one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my life. And then the second I became a dad, it was like, oh yeah, I could totally do this a lot. Let's definitely do that. But yeah, I think we're probably done at 3. My wife said no more after 40. It's, once she broke that 40-year-old moment, she was like, I just don't want to keep having kids after 40 years old. So, I mean, like I said, she controls the factory. And if we would have, not had them every 4 years and had them a little closer together, maybe it'd have worked out better. But I am unbelievably blessed with the amazingly awesome 3 kiddos that I have. Right, buddy?
What do you mean?
My 3 kiddos.
Counting Diana.
Well, of course.
Kiddos Flash.
Oh, Flash, you want to count the dog and say we have 4 kiddos? Yeah. It's funny. But, all right, so with a 3-month-old, I'm betting that the house is a little crazy. A 3-year-old and a 3-month-old, or at least no, is it still? Was it 3, 4 months? Somewhere around there, right?
Yeah,
4 months.
Yeah, right around there.
When are you thinking about having a third, or what does your wife think about the third? When does she want to start thinking about that?
We've really enjoyed the spacing of the 2.5 years apart, because it feels like Rory got to a point where she can communicate her needs. She knows when we're telling her not to do something. That doesn't mean that she obeys when we tell her not to do something, but she at least understands what's going on, and she's not a baby anymore. It doesn't feel like. So that, assuming that our plans are God's plans, 2.5 years apart was just an awesome difference, we thought.
Yeah. That's what we were trying to do with our second and third, was about that 2-year apart. Hey, move your hand, little rascal. Was about the 2-year mark, but God had different plans, and we were trying for a couple years before we finally had our third, and it was, again in God's time, whatever it was going to be. But super happy to have a little girl now. So, so are you wanting like a boy next, or are you guys just wanting more kids, or what's the plan, or what's the hope?
10 fingers, 10 toes.
That's exactly right.
Yep. I love being a girl dad. It's just been so fun. And I just feel like we have such a cool opportunity as dads of girls to be the example of what they should look for in a husband one day.
Yeah.
In the way that I love Sarah and I treat Sarah and I love Rory. It's like we get to be our daughter's first love as a man,
Yeah.
you know? So I just see that as such cool opportunity that we have. And so it's hard for me to even imagine having a boy at this point. I would love a boy though.
Yeah. So imagine though that feeling that now you get to represent what it is to be a strong, godly man to a boy.
Yeah.
Right. And what it means to, how to treat their wife. And so like now I get the benefit of seeing it from both sides now. And I mean, granted, my daughter's only 5 months old, but it's still now I think about that differently and say, okay, what am I doing to represent a godly husband so that my daughter sees that? Obviously, at 5 months, she doesn't see anything. She's just kind of hanging out. But if I'm not thinking about it now, then I'm going to have a much harder time catching up later. So, but yeah, I'm with you, though, on the 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 eyes, and a nose. That's all I care about. I mean, if it's a boy, it's a boy. It's a girl, it's a girl. I don't care. Like, come on out and we're going to have fun. So.
I mean, I just a couple times on our call today, we've talked about like, well, I just grew up thinking that was normal because that's just what I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So I want my kids to one day, if they're talking to someone, searching for a relationship, that alarm bells go off when they're like, wait, this is not normal. Like, you do not talk to me this way, or I should not talk to you that way. Like, it was normal for dad to come home and give mom a big hug and a kiss and them to be affectionate towards each other, easy to remember when you and I are talking about like, how do we be good dads? Harder in the day to day, but the more we talk about it, the more we remember that we need to do it. So
yeah, that's exactly right. That's why I do these. I mean, I record 2 of these a week, just so that I can keep that constantly in my brain as I'm, struggling on the day to day, because there is no such thing as a perfect father. There's, we have a perfect example in Jesus, in God, but there's no such thing as a perfect father. We need to strive to help our children to be, like I tell them, just my job is to help them be better men than me, and now help my daughter to find a better man than me. So that's my goal and that's my hope. So we'll keep that rolling, huh, buddy? All right, good answer. Too busy playing with my watch, you little punk. But, all right, is there anything that you think that we should have touched on and haven't yet, Taylor? I mean, we've gone all over the place on our conversation, but I'd love to talk about anything that you feel like we should have talked about, or any questions you have for me, besides the homeschool, of course.
I just think that we just have such a cool opportunity as dads, to pour into our kids and be examples.
Mm-hmm.
I also think as business leaders, leaders of people, just being able to lead in such a way where you are helping that person be a better husband or a better wife or a better, I just feel like we have such cool responsibility on our shoulders that we should just take advantage of that to pour into our kids, into our marriage, and to the people that we lead with such intention. I'm just thankful for that. And so I just really want to encourage everyone that, being intentional as a dad is really important. Being intentional as a husband is super important. And being intentional as a business leader of people is important as well. So it's a lot of crossover characteristics and a lot of crossover importance.
Very much agreed. Yeah, I think that's, and I think it's hard to think about it, to your same point, while it's happening. But if we can be a good example for our employees, be a good example for our kids, and cross collateralize those relationships, to make sure that, they're seeing what it means to be a good boss. They're seeing what it means to be a good employee. They're seeing what it means to be a good business owner, what it means to be a good Christian, what it means to be a good husband, what it means to be a good dad. Thank you so much for my radio, buddy. But no, I think it's an amazing, wonderful, daunting task on our shoulders to represent that well. So, but I appreciate you coming on and representing that well and showing some vulnerability and having some good conversation, Taylor. It was absolutely a pleasure to get to know you, and I look forward to hopefully 2.0. You found where I put my stuff. Boy, this kid is going through all my stuff in here. But no, I greatly appreciate you jumping on here and chatting. It was absolutely a pleasure to get to know you and learn from you. And I look forward to, like I was trying to say, is maybe 2.0 later on when you've had baby number 3, even, perhaps, or even before then. If you guys want to get on and we can have a podcast about nothing but homeschool, I'd be happy to do that as well. And learn and grow at the same time, and enjoy some time. But thank you so very much again for jumping on. If anybody wanted to reach out to you for one reason or another, what's the best place for them to get a hold of you?
Super easy to find on social media. Just Taylor Doolittle. There's not many with my name. So always willing to be helpful in any way possible if I can add value in any way. So I should never expect, when I'm reaching out to people for help, I can't expect them to reach out if I'm not willing to, have a conversation with anybody. So absolutely happy to help in any way possible.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Taylor. Again, I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate you jumping on. Looking forward to the next time, and hopefully, see you again in person at another event here in the near future. All right. Thank you, everybody. Please, yes, absolutely. Please reach out to Taylor if you have anything, especially if you're in the Twin Cities and you're looking to buy or sell a house. For sure, reach out to Taylor up there. But thank you again, and we'll see everybody on the next episode.